Do you want to talk about astrology? Do you want to tell people of the world of YouTube all about astrology? No? Yeah? No. Hi, my name is Ariel and welcome to Mermaid Musings. This video is going to be about how Jupiter and Aquarius will affect you personally based on what house Jupiter and Aquarius is transiting through in your natal chart. If you don't know what house Jupiter and Aquarius is transiting through in your natal chart, don't worry, I will link a natal chart calculator below. Basically, whatever house has Aquarius written next to it, that's the house that you want to click on in the timestamps to watch. If you want a more general reading on how Jupiter and Aquarius will affect everybody, I already made that video, which I will link that down below as well. In this video, I'm also going to be talking about Saturn and how Saturn will be affecting Jupiter, as Saturn is also in the sign of Aquarius. So if you want to know more about Saturn and Aquarius, I already made 2 videos on that. So once again, those will be linked down below as well. Now, if you've been paying attention to horoscopes, you probably already know that Jupiter was in Aquarius earlier this year. Jupiter went into Aquarius on December 19th, 2020, and stayed there until May 13th, 2021. It moved into Pisces, but it has now gone retrograde, and it is retrograded back into the sign of Aquarius, where it will stay until December 28th, 2021. So think back about what themes were popping up in your life the first time that Jupiter was in Aquarius, because you're going to be seeing those same themes again. So think of this as a second opportunity to explore those themes. Jupiter won't be in Aquarius again until 2032. So this is the last chance you're going to have to work with this energy for a long time. So it's important that you take the opportunity to utilize this energy. So I'm just going to say it, Jupiter in Aquarius kind of sucks. It isn't that there's anything wrong with Jupiter in Aquarius by itself. The problem is that Saturn is also in the sign of Aquarius. So Saturn is restricting Jupiter, even though they're not going to be in conjunction the entire time because they're not close enough in degrees. They're both still transiting the same house in your natal chart. For example, I have Aquarius in my 6th house, so that's where Saturn is transiting for me currently. Now that Jupiter has moved back into Aquarius, I also have Jupiter in my 6th house. So because of Saturn being there, Jupiter isn't really getting to do what it wants to do. I don't know about y'all, but when Jupiter moved into Pisces, I felt this sudden wave of relief. Jupiter was no longer restricted, it was finally free. When it's in the same house as Saturn, it isn't free. Jupiter is expansion and Saturn is restriction. So both planets are kind of in a standstill. Neither planet is able to fully express itself because the energies of each planet are canceling each other out. Jupiter is blocking Saturn from restriction and Saturn is blocking Jupiter from expansion. Jupiter is luck and Saturn is harsh life lessons. So Jupiter is shielding you from those harsh life lessons that ultimately help you to grow as a human being. And Saturn is taking away your luck. Jupiter is carefree, go with the flow energy, while Saturn is rigid and likes to meticulously plan out everything before taking action. So you really aren't getting the benefits of either planet. So it kind of sucks right now because neither planet is really doing anything for us. Don't worry though, I'm going to tell you how to navigate this energy so you can make Jupiter work for you right now. If Jupiter is transiting your 1st house, that means you are having luck and expansion, but also restriction in the house of self-identity. You're probably going to be pretty popular during this time. People easily like you. If you're someone who wants to get out and meet new people, if you want to make new friends, do that now. Once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and moves into Pisces, then that luck goes away and you only have Saturn hanging out in your 1st house. Saturn restricts, so you're going to have a harder time meeting new people. Whether that's you're not getting invited to social activities where you can meet anybody new, or people aren't as open and receptive when they first meet you. So really use this time to be sociable, to make connections and interact with other people. The 1st house is the lens through which you see the world. Jupiter wants to help you expand that lens. This can give you a more positive outlook on life. Yes, Saturn is there, so you know that everything kind of sucks, but you can still be positive when things go wrong. That's what Jupiter is trying to teach you right now. Everything in your life doesn't have to be perfect or fantastic in order for you to be positive. It's easy to be positive when your life is going great. It's hard to be positive when life sucks, but that's actually usually when it's the most important that you remain positive. Jupiter and Saturn in your 1st house are trying to teach you this. Jupiter wants to teach you how to remain positive in the hard times. It's often when life is the hardest that we actually grow the most. So if you can recognize that you're growing and you can see the positive changes that are taking place because of your challenges, this will make you someone who is unstoppable and ready to take on the world. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting your second house, that means you're having luck and expansion, but also restriction in your house of money and security. With Saturn in your second house, money is more difficult to come by during this time. Jupiter being there doesn't negate the difficulties of Saturn, but it does make it easier to gain money. Now with Saturn, it's not like making money is going to happen like magic where you win the lottery or something. You have to work hard for every dollar you get. Jupiter wants to reward you for that hard work by giving you money in proportion to the amount of work that you put in. Once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, but you still have Saturn in Aquarius in your second house, you're going to have a harder time making money. Or you might work just as hard as you did while Jupiter was in Aquarius, but you don't see the same monetary gains. So what you need to do is take advantage of Jupiter in Aquarius right now to set yourself up for when you only have Saturn in your second house. So let's say you get the opportunity to pick up extra shifts at work. That's Jupiter providing you with luck to make more money, but you have to put in the hard work of Saturn in order to actually attain it. So take any extra work that provides you with extra money that you can during this time. Or if you're lucky enough to have extra income from your job, don't spend it all. Take the time to readjust your finances and start saving for your future. With Jupiter in Aquarius, it's really easy to go out and spend your money frivolously because Jupiter is the fun planet. Instead, use that money to expand your savings account or use it to pay off debt. Use your money in a way that's constructive, that's going to help you in the long run. Once we only have Saturn in Aquarius, which is harsh life lessons, it's going to be easier for you to get into debt, or if you're already in debt, for you to get even further into debt. You might find that you're not making as much money at work and now you can't pay your bills. Or, not to freak anybody out, but you might get fired. So you need to use this time of Jupiter in Aquarius to prepare yourself for the worst financially. If you take preparations now, you might be able to avoid a potential financial crisis or at least mitigate it. Last point, there's a very good chance you hate what you do in order to make money. Or you might be in a job where you work your ass off, but yet there's zero upward mobility or the company doesn't respect you and it doesn't give you fair compensation for the amount of work that you do. If this is you, start looking for a new job right now. Jupiter in Aquarius will provide you luck when it comes to a new way to make money. But once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you have Saturn there, you're probably going to have to wait until after Saturn leaves Aquarius to find a new job. And even if you find one, it might be just the same as the current job you're in. So take this time to apply for jobs that you enjoy because you never know what could happen. It could be that you get your dream job right now, but in order to do so, you have to take a pay cut. And that's the Saturn and Aquarius lesson, where you get to enjoy your life more, but you now have restriction when it comes to your finances. Or you might get a job that still sucks, but at least it pays better than your current job. So your Saturn lesson still revolves around being in a job that you hate, but now you're in a better financial situation, which you can use to your leverage in order to get a better job that you actually want to do in the future. Jupiter is always full of surprises, so you never really know what benefits it's going to bring into your life. But it always brings benefits. You just have to be self-aware enough to reach out and take them. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting your third house, that means you have luck and expansion, but also restriction in the house of learning and communication. This is a great time for you to learn. Aquarius is an air sign, meaning that it loves to learn and talk about all kinds of interesting information. So Jupiter is expanding that intellectual curiosity. So right now, learn about everything and anything that interests you. Don't limit yourself when it comes to information. Don't be afraid to read about topics that you know absolutely nothing about. That's going to bring you excitement and only make you smarter. Also, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Don't be afraid to challenge your own thoughts and beliefs. Aquarius can get kind of dogmatic, where it makes up its mind about a subject so then it doesn't want to read any conflicting material about the same subject. It's already really easy for you to do this right now because you have Saturn in Aquarius transiting your third house, which brings limitation, but it would be healthier for you to use Saturn in a more productive way than limiting your intellectual curiosity. If you really do believe that you're right, then contradictory opinions shouldn't bother you because they have no power over you. You have the power to read different opinions than your own and not be swayed by other people's opinions. If your opinion is right, then reading about the same subject from a different perspective should only reinforce in your mind why you're right, which actually gives you tools when you're talking to someone with a different perspective, because you actually understand where they are coming from. Instead of arguing with a wall, you now have the power to potentially change the other person's opinion. Or if you do wind up seeing different topics from a different perspective, or you wind up changing your mind about certain topics, that's actually a good thing. You're breaking yourself free from limited beliefs or ideas. So don't be afraid to learn about other perspectives that contradict your worldview. Don't let Saturn hold you back from mentally growing. Use Jupiter to continue to make yourself more intelligent. The most important lesson you can learn right now is not to self-censor or let anyone else censor you. It's really easy with Saturn and Aquarius in the third house to not actually speak about what your thoughts and opinions are because you're scared of being judged for them. Aquarius is a group sign. No matter how much it likes to brag about being different, really deep down it does want to fit in. So if you have thoughts and opinions that are different from popular worldviews or go against that of your peers, it can be scary to speak up because you don't want to feel criticized or feel like you're on the outside. But I'm going to encourage you not to fall into this trap. Aquarius is meant to be an outsider because it often takes an outsider to come in with new ideas that change the world. No forward progress in human history has come from insiders because they want things to stay the same because that benefits them. It takes an outsider to shake things up. So don't be afraid to cause a little chaos with your thoughts and opinions. Don't be afraid of being disliked by others. When you try desperately and change your opinions in order to fit in, you're cutting yourself off from the Aquarius part of yourself, which means you're not living up to your full intellectual potential. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting your fourth house, that means you have luck and expansion, but also restriction in the house of the deepest part of your soul. The IC in your fourth house is the deepest part of your natal chart, meaning it is the deepest part of you. This might be more complicated astrology, but if you know what degree your IC is in, then you need to pay attention to the degrees of Jupiter and Saturn. The closer in degrees those planets are to your IC, the more intensely you are going to feel the effects of each planet. So you'll probably feel Jupiter stronger at certain points and Saturn stronger at certain points, depending on how close each planet is to your IC. So in your case, the energy of these planets is really going to ebb and flow depending on where they are in the sky. Sometimes you will feel the effects of them stronger than others, but you will still be experiencing the effects of each planet as long as they are in Aquarius. So you are experiencing both expansion and restriction in the depths of your soul. That's a hard thing to do, and it's probably going to leave you emotionally confused. Aquarius already doesn't like strong emotions. It makes Aquarius uncomfortable. Aquarius doesn't know what to do with emotions, so it tries to detach from them completely. So right now is a time where you might be feeling less emotional than normal because you don't know how to handle it. Jupiter is taking the most detached part of your personality and expanding it. Plus, Saturn really doesn't like to feel. That's a huge part of why it likes to restrict. So you have this double whammy that is trying to cut you off from your emotional depths. But that's not good, and it's not emotionally healthy either. Detachment does nothing to help you in the long run. This transit is about becoming comfortable with your most uncomfortable emotions. It's about sitting in emotions that you don't like and staying there, so you can fully experience them instead of detaching from them. When you learn how to process and work through your emotions, not skipping any steps, where you allow yourself to feel all that you are capable of feeling, you create a better relationship to your emotions. It doesn't matter how deep, dark, and depressing your emotions are, they are still a healthy, normal part of the human experience. When you cut yourself off from experiencing your emotions, you're cutting yourself off from your true self, meaning you're not as full and complex of a person as you are meant to be. Also, the IC is the roots of your natal chart. Everything grows from the roots. So if you don't have a healthy IC, then you aren't able to utilize the rest of your natal chart fully or properly. So use Jupiter to allow yourself to feel all your feelings without restrictions. You will become a more complete person because of it. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting your fifth house, That means you have luck and expansion, but also restriction in the house of creativity and children. So if you're a creative person, this is an excellent time for you. Actually, this might be the best house for this Jupiter and Saturn transit, so lucky you. You're going to be able to get a lot of creative work done during this period, plus the work you create is probably going to be excellent. Jupiter is luck and expansion, so you're going to be able to come up with all these new creative ideas. You probably don't even have to do much of anything. You can be doing something completely unrelated, and all of a sudden you have this light bulb moment where this idea comes to you. Now, what's important is that you actually follow through with those ideas, which is what Saturn is trying to teach you. A lot of the time we have creative ideas, but we don't follow through with the impulse. So let's say, for example, you're a writer. You have this great new idea for a story. That's awesome, but you actually have to go and write it down. If you don't go and put the pen to paper, then you aren't a writer. You're just this creative, imaginative daydreamer. That's what Saturn is trying to bring into your life, that discipline to turn your passion into art. Now, Jupiter is expansion in every direction, so it can go all over the place. There's a good chance that's what your creativity is going to feel like during this time. Your head is probably going to be filled with tons of new creative ideas. Follow them all. So using the writer metaphor again, you might come up with 10 different stories during this time. You might feel like that's bad because you're not following through with any of them. However, don't worry about that while Jupiter is in Aquarius. Having tons of fresh new ideas is what you're supposed to be doing. Or maybe you don't have tons of new ideas, but you spend this time working on the first draft of your story. It doesn't matter how good it is. What matters is you write down your ideas as soon as they come to you. Once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you're probably not going to be having all these fresh new ideas come to you anymore. Once you only have Saturn in Aquarius, that's when it's time to get serious about the work that you do right now. So take those 10 stories and actually flesh them out. Sit down and complete them. Use Saturn in Aquarius to problem solve areas where you're stuck in your story. Or if you wrote your first draft, use Saturn in Aquarius to write your second, third, fourth, fifth draft, etc. until you feel that your story is done. The ideas you come up with while Jupiter is in Aquarius, you will be able to bring to completion once Saturn is in Aquarius. Also, bit of a change of subject here, but this is also a time where you might get pregnant. So if you're trying to have a baby, now is the best time to get pregnant. Jupiter is expansion, so it's expanding that capability for you. So once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn there, meaning you only have restriction there, it's going to be a lot more difficult. This also applies to adoption. You're going to have a lot more luck in that area if you try to do it while Jupiter is in Aquarius. Or if you're someone who does not want to get pregnant, be cautious during this time. You're more likely to have an accident right now. It could be that you get pregnant while Jupiter is in Aquarius, but once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn there, then you have to deal with the consequences of you getting pregnant, no matter what decision you choose to make. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting your 6th house, that means you're having luck and expansion, but also restriction in your house of your daily routines. So with having Aquarius in your 6th house, you're already probably not a really big fan of having a routine. In fact, you probably hate routine and try your best to avoid it. You don't like structure, it bores you. You want your daily life to be completely different from the rest of society. Saturn in Aquarius has been trying to force you into this rigid routine that you hate. But Jupiter in Aquarius is here to give you a reprieve from all that energy, which is good, but also kind of bad. Jupiter in Aquarius is expanding your need and desire to have a day-to-day life where you get to color outside the lines. But Saturn in Aquarius won't let that happen. So what's now going on in your day-to-day is nothing. It's making your day-to-day life kind of boring. You're not getting that structure where you can get tasks accomplished, or you're leaving tasks left unfinished, or you're kind of half-assing a bunch of stuff. But at the same time, you're not even getting that freedom that you so desire. So you're kind of stuck. You don't have the benefits of the structure and restriction, nor do you have the benefits of independence and freedom. This can actually be really depressing because you're having to confront this issue on an everyday basis. You don't get a reprieve from it as long as Jupiter and Saturn are in Aquarius. The best way to use Jupiter during this time is to actually give in to Jupiter expanding your Saturn. I know that's hard for you because you're a bit of a rebel in that area of your life. But trust me, if you give up fighting and work with this energy, your life will be a lot better for it. Use Jupiter in Aquarius to help expand your routine. Use it to actually give yourself more tasks to accomplish. Right now, Saturn is trying to show you the benefits of having a daily schedule. Jupiter there can make adhering to this daily schedule less hard. Now, I don't mean you have to have a boring 8 to 5 schedule like everybody else, though I'm sure some of you are being forced into that. Though if you're someone who's had a boring 8 to 5 schedule for a while, Saturn might actually be forcing you out of that. What Saturn is trying to teach you right now is how to have a day-to-day life that works for you, that isn't total chaos. Just because your day-to-day life doesn't reflect the average individual doesn't mean that it has to be chaotic and that your schedule has to work against you. Saturn in Aquarius is trying to teach you to have a routine that's different from everybody else's, but still works in your benefit. Jupiter in Aquarius is trying to assist Saturn in this endeavor. Now that Jupiter is in Aquarius, it's a great time to try a whole bunch of different routines. Try one routine for a couple of weeks, and then try another routine for a couple of weeks, and then try another one, etc. Experiment and see what works best for you. Even if it's a routine that seems weird and insane, try it. Your 6th house is in Aquarius after all. Then when Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you have a bunch of different experiences to draw from. You know which routines didn't work at all and that you never want to try again. You also know which routines worked the best. So now you can focus on those specific routines and you know which one or ones work best for you. Saturn is about restriction, so once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you're going to be able to weed out what doesn't work and really narrow your focus on your best routine. But you have to utilize Jupiter in Aquarius in order to get there. You have to expand your routine choices before you can restrict them. If Saturn in Aquarius is transiting your 7th house, that means you have luck and expansion, but also restriction in your house of partnerships. If you're single and you really want to be in a relationship while Jupiter is in Aquarius, that is the best time for you to meet someone. Saturn is restriction, so once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn there, it's going to be a lot harder for you to meet someone new. I'm not saying that it's impossible or that you should give up on love the entire time that Saturn is in Aquarius. Just know that it's going to be more difficult. For example, if you're on a dating app, you'll probably notice that there's less people you want to match with, or there's less people that match with you. Or you might wind up dating people that you're not that intensely drawn to, that you feel kind of detached from. It's more about wanting to date rather than being really interested in the person you're with, though that will probably teach you some great life lessons in and of itself. Right now, with Jupiter in Aquarius, you're much more likely to meet people that you were genuinely and honestly attracted to. So embrace that opportunity. When you only have Saturn in Aquarius in the 7th house, whether you're single or in a relationship, it doesn't matter. Your love life is going to be more difficult. Likewise, with Jupiter in Aquarius, it doesn't matter if you're single or in a relationship, your love life is going to be less difficult. So if you are in a relationship, embrace this opportunity. These are going to be the more easygoing months that you have in your relationship. This is also going to be when you're able to have the most fun with your partner. So embrace that. Jupiter in Aquarius can also expand the love that you have for your partner. Embrace that opportunity as well. Now, it isn't all doom and gloom once Jupiter leaves Aquarius. I don't want you thinking that you only have a few months to enjoy the relationship you're in and then it's going to end, which for some of you that might be the case. However, if your relationship does end, just know that it was supposed to happen. But what Saturn in Aquarius can also mean is that your relationship is moving to the next level. Saturn is about dedication and commitment. So it could be that you meet someone now and you're having a lot of fun together. Then once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you become exclusive and you decide to take the relationship more seriously. That's restriction like Saturn because you're no longer dating anyone else, but that's not bad restriction if that's the kind of relationship that you want. Or once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, maybe you decide to move in together. So these are your last months of the freedom that comes with not living with your romantic partner. Or you might even get engaged. I've seen a lot of people get engaged when Saturn was transiting over their 7th house. Which, while getting engaged is awesome, it's still a serious commitment. And getting married comes with a lot of hard work, which is a very Saturn type of theme. So really utilize this Jupiter in Aquarius transit to have fun. Don't be so worried about the seriousness. That will come later. Right now, just do whatever makes you happy when it comes to your romantic relationships. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting over your 8th house, that means you're having luck and expansion, but also restriction in the house of depth, darkness, and intimacy. So right now, Jupiter in Aquarius is trying to take your depth and your darkness and make them bigger. Most people are scared of their depth and their darkness, so they try to make it smaller or run away from it. However, when you do that, you're also shrinking and running away from your power. Most people want power, but they try to exclude the darkness within themselves, but you can't have one without the other. So they spend their lives chasing power and never getting it, and they never understand why. But that's because they are literally running away from their power. Power isn't something that you chase, it's found within yourself. Plant yourself and go down into your darkness and your depths in order to find that power that you've been looking for. It's been within you all along. Jupiter in Aquarius wants to show you this. This transit is making it easier to access that power, but you have to reach out and take the opportunity. Now, obviously, you also have Saturn there, which Saturn is harsh life lessons and restrictions. So right now, while Jupiter is in Aquarius, it's the best time to explore these themes within yourself. Because once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn in your 8th house, it's going to be much more difficult to find your power. Saturn perfects what it touches, so it isn't that you can't find your power, it's just that Saturn wants to make your power stronger. But if you haven't found your darkness and your power before it's only Saturn in Aquarius, then that darkness and power is going to be much more difficult to find. This is why you want to explore your power and your darkness right now while Jupiter is in Aquarius. Because you're going to have an easier time tapping into that part of yourself. Then once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you've already found that power and that darkness within yourself. So you don't have to go searching for it. Then the only thing you have to worry about is perfecting it. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius in your 9th house, that means that you have luck and expansion, but also restriction in the house of philosophy. Right now is one of the best times for you to get in touch with your spiritual side. Saturn there is restricting you or forcing you to take a hard look at your spiritual or religious beliefs. You might be seeing spirituality and religion in a much harsher light than you saw it before. You might be seeing some truths that are hard to accept. Jupiter here is sort of giving you a reprieve from that. Right now, even with Saturn being a downer, you can still see the good side or the positivity in your spirituality or religion. With Saturn there, you know it's not perfect, but you can still see the benefits that it brings into your life as well as other people who are involved in the same community. So now might be the time that you work on making sure that the benefits outweigh the cons. Now is a time to work to make the community you're in a better place. I'm going to use the word church in my example of what you might be experiencing during this transit, but just know that it doesn't have to specifically be a church. You can replace the word in your mind with whatever spiritual or religious community you're involved in. I just don't want to sit here and list every possible community you could be involved of because that would take way too long. So please don't think I'm only talking about churches or I'm trying to convince you to join a church if that's not your thing. So let's say you're involved in a church and you see some behavior from church leaders that you don't agree with. Maybe this transit provides you with the opportunity where you can volunteer in the church so you can be the positive change that the church desperately needs. If that's the case for you, be sure to get involved right now because right now is when you're going to have the best luck doing so. You're much more likely to find a volunteer position. If you wait until after Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn there might not be a volunteer position for a while. If you ask to volunteer right now, you're much more likely to be welcomed with open arms versus if you wait till after Jupiter leaves Aquarius, people are likely to try and gatekeep and be less receptive to you wanting to help. So be the change that you want to see in your community and act on those changes right now. On the other hand, Jupiter in Aquarius might be signaling that it's time for you to leave your church. If you're part of an organization that doesn't reflect your beliefs and values, why do you keep going? Aquarius is about giving power to the group. So let's say that you're going to a church that teaches values that you don't agree with. You can't separate yourself from that. By going, you are aligning yourself with those beliefs. Because by being a part of that community, you are giving more power over to that belief system. So you have two choices if this is happening to you. You can speak up and say that you disagree and try to change it. Or you can leave and go find a church that reflects your values and your belief system. By leaving, you are taking away power from that church that you no longer support and giving more power to a church who is uplifting your community in a more positive way. Jupiter is about expansion. So this time could be you trying out a bunch of different churches and not really settling on one. It's about you going out and finding out what is out there. So you can pick the church that best reflects who you are as an individual. Lastly, let's say that you're someone who's spiritual or you're religious, but you're not part of a group. You prefer to study and practice on your own. Now is a great time to become part of a group, to get out and meet people who share the same belief systems as you. Aquarius is less focused on the individual and more focused on the community. So it doesn't want you to do your practice on your own. It wants you to practice your beliefs with other people. Now, let's say you're in a small town and most people there don't share your beliefs. Well, now now might be a time to travel to other cities and see if you can build a community there. Or because Aquarius rules the internet, now might be a great time to build a community online of people who share similar beliefs as you. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting your 10th house, that means you're having luck and expansion, but also restriction in your house of reputation and career. If there's some big change that you want to make in your career, either do it now or wait until after Saturn leaves Aquarius. Saturn is hard work, but Jupiter is luck. So let's say, for example, you want to leave your current job and start your own company. Jupiter is providing you with the luck to do that right now. Though once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn there, you no longer have luck. The only thing you have left is hard work. So if you start it now, you have good luck at the beginning. That then if you continue to work hard through those difficulties and challenges that Saturn and Aquarius will bring, at least you had a good start that can help to sustain you throughout the more difficult times. Or let's say you already own a business, try to do as much work right now as you can to grow your business as large as possible. Because once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, your business is probably going to shrink somewhat. So if you did the work to expand your business during this transit, then your business will shrink less because your business is shrinking from a larger place. Or let's say you don't own a business, but you work in sales. Try to expand your client base and take on as many new clients as possible, because once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you're likely to lose some of your clients. So if you're starting from a larger client base, you losing some clients won't take as big of a toll on your bottom line. Obviously, these are very specific examples that aren't going to be the case for most of you. I'm just trying to give you an idea of the types of scenarios you can find yourself in with this transit. So take these examples and apply them to your specific situation. The 10th house is also our online persona. So let's say you want to grow your social media platform. Be sure to do what Saturn likes to do and take the work that you put into your social media accounts very seriously. Post regularly and put in the effort to create interesting posts. With Jupiter there providing you luck, that hard work that Saturn pushes you to do is going to pay off big time. You can have posts that go more viral or that gain traction and engagement. Your social media presence is expanding during this time, so people are able to see you more. So take advantage of that, because once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you no longer have that expansion on your side. You're left with discipline, restriction, and hard work. You can still grow a huge social media presence during this time, it's just going to be more difficult. For example, let's say that while Jupiter is in Aquarius, you have posts that go somewhat viral and they gain you a bunch of followers all at once. Once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, those large jumps in growth stop. In fact, your engagement will probably go back down somewhat. So then your focus shifts from gaining tons of new followers to turning your already existing followers into your biggest fans who are constantly engaged with your content. Saturn is all about building a stable foundation under yourself. So it becomes less about growth and creating a dedicated following, so you always have a stable fan base to fall back on. So if you utilize Jupiter correctly now, you will have a larger audience to turn into dedicated fans. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius transiting your 11th house, that means you have luck and expansion, but also restriction in your house of social groups and friendships. So you're going through the lessons we as a collective are learning when it comes to our social group and friendships. Except you're experiencing those blessings and harsh lessons much more strongly than everyone else. So you're having the purest experience of both these transits. For you, Jupiter and Saturn and Aquarius are like on steroids. Right now is the best time to expand your social network, because once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn in Aquarius, you're going to have a more difficult time meeting new people. So if you've been wanting to make new friendships, don't wait. Really put yourself out there and do everything that you can to meet new people, because Jupiter is going to give you that opportunity. With Jupiter and Saturn working together, it might be like Jupiter is getting you invited to all these social events, but with Saturn there, you really don't feel like going. Right now, you need to embrace the opportunity and go, even if it's hard. Saturn is there to put challenges in your way, but it brings great rewards. So maybe you get invited to go to happy hour after work, but you don't want to go because you're so tired from work. Go anyway. Or maybe you meet someone and they invite you to a party, but you're scared to go because you don't know anyone there. Go anyway. Jupiter is providing you with opportunities. You just have to do the hard work of showing up at those opportunities. Also, once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you will have purely restriction with Saturn in your 11th house. So many of those social opportunities that pop up for you now will be gone. You're not going to get invited to as many social events. If you don't embrace Jupiter now, Saturn is going to teach you a rough lesson about those missed opportunities. To give you an example, let's say someone you meet invites you out now and you say no. Well, then they might not invite you out again, which then later, if you want to go and hang out with that person, that opportunity is gone. The 11th house also has to do with networking for your career. Now is going to be the easiest time to do that. Once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you're going to have a harder time networking, so jump on those opportunities now. Lastly, once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, that's going to put restrictions on your social groups. This is going to be a time where you wind up cutting some people out, or people wind up ghosting you, or your friendships just organically, naturally drift apart. That's a huge part of why it's good to focus on meeting new people right now. Not all of the connections you form now are going to stick. In fact, I would say most of them don't wind up being long-term connections. However, the relationships that do stick are going to become stronger and formed on a more solid foundation. That includes the people you meet now, as well as your already existing friendships. So this transit is about spending more time with people who you're already friends with, and it's also about the beginning stages of new relationships. Jupiter and Aquarius can bring people into your life who will be there for a long time. So don't waste that opportunity by letting Saturn hold you back. If you have Jupiter and Aquarius transiting your 12th house, that means you have luck and expansion, but also restriction in the house of inner life and self-undoing. Jupiter is sort of a double-edged sword here. On the one hand, it's providing protection, but on the other hand, it's expanding your most self-destructive qualities. So you can act self-destructively during this time, but you don't have to face any consequences for it. However, once Jupiter leaves Aquarius and you only have Saturn there, which is harsh life lessons, all those self-destructive actions you took during this time are going to come back to haunt you. You no longer have Jupiter there to shield you from the consequences of your actions. Now you have Saturn there, which the only thing Saturn cares about is that you learn your lesson. It doesn't care how harsh it has to be to do so. In fact, Saturn might be downright destructive. So don't give in to your worst habits just because you're lucky enough to not have to face consequences for them, because that's not gonna last forever. What concerns me the most about this transit is you getting too heavily involved in drinking or drugs. The 12th house is the house of escapism, where we can't handle reality anymore, so we turn towards non-reality. The easiest way to do this is through drinking and drugs. With expansion there, it's easier for you to drink too much or get too high, because no matter how far gone you are, it never feels like enough. And you can easily get away with it during this time. You won't have to face any consequences for your actions. But just know, once Jupiter leaves Aquarius, you're probably going to have to deal with those consequences. You might get drug tested at work, or you might think that you didn't really drink too much and you're fine to drive, and then all of a sudden you get a DUI. So don't be that person. I'm not saying that you have to spend this transit sober. All I'm saying is just don't go too far with it. Don't continuously expand your partying. Recognize when you need to stop. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please do me a big favor and be sure to like and subscribe below for more cool astrology content. I've got a lot of cool videos coming up on transits as well as natal chart placements. Also, be sure to follow me on social media. If you're really into transits, I post about them a lot on my Instagram. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video helps you to navigate Jupiter in Aquarius.